but they would also be,
Is it time?
It's time.
Okay, you all know that we will be on YouTube after this is completed.
We are actually live on YouTube right now.
Very good.
So,
So, welcome everybody, and reducing on our first stage. But it's good to see all of you here today.
we are actually live on YouTube right now. Oops. So, sorry. Pause. Okay. I had to mute us on this end so we won't hear the delay playback. Sorry. This is the first time I've done this, y'all. So.
That's okay. First time we've done this too.
Mm.
I can't.
Y'all are going to have to speak really, really loudly to get to the microphone here. So, just a heads up.
So anyway, glad to see you here and all of you looking well. Maybe we can endure our meetings this way for a while before we get back to the real normal. But I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth Bingley, who is our chairperson. If you want to get us started.
All right, I'll call the meeting to order. And have you heard, is Mr.
I have not heard from him. He appeared last week, thinking it was last week. So I don't know if he'll be able to make this week or not.
All right, so we'll get started then and go over the minutes from the last meeting, which was February 19th. So if you would read those and then after you complete them, see if you have any comments, questions, additions.
I think I may have put the wrong name at the bottom of that, where these minutes composed by Christy Time. Okay, so we should change that from Mary Ann Grant Secretary to Christy Time. Christy, do you want to read them aloud or have us read them silently?
Read them silently.
Are there any other comments about the minutes?
looks like most of it was talked about, got canceled. Everything in March, just about, wasn't it?
Yes, we had a very successful program that we went out on, which was a Harry Potter program, more or less organized by one of our staffers, Stephanie Colley. But she got several other staffers involved with it as well, and they presented classes on potion making, herbology, the care of magical creatures, and defense against the dark arts. And from what I understand, 52 people attended and loved it. And they are asking for it to be presented again next spring. So we're planning on doing that. It was quite successful, was the first week of March, and then we closed on March 19th. So we went out with a bang, at least.
All right, so minutes are accepted and we'll move on to old business, of which you already covered some of the old business.
Just a little bit of it.
Anything else you want to add?
Well, those of you who have an agenda or can see an agenda, we've had pretty much the regular 11 or 12 in story time each time. We have had a genealogy workshop on March the 7th that another staffer and I attended in Moody. That was quite interesting. And then, of course, like I said, we closed on March 19th. We still have not opened the library. We are primarily waiting at this point in time to finish getting our tempered glass partitions up in front of the countertops and on both levels and between the computers of the patrons. So there has been some holdup on that simply because supplies are not readily available like they were at the very beginning. As soon as that is done, we do plan to open up and admit a limited number of people per floor. In the meantime, we did start our summer reading program, and we are currently doing pickup for patrons outside if they want to call in ahead of time, tell us which books they want. This is for children's books and for adult books. Then we will run them to their car when they come in and let us know they're waiting out there. That's working fairly well. We haven't had, of course, the numbers of circulation that we typically do by emails, but it's satisfying some who just really want that hard copy book rather than an ebook.
All right, we'll move on to new business.
Under personnel, we have our laborer who was hired shortly before we had closure. And she was interested in coming back if we would have her when we reopen to staff. And she has come back. She's doing an excellent job, especially cleaning up outside in addition to indoors. She's a hard worker and she's keeping up with it, surprisingly. Good. We also have hired 2 student workers who came back. One of them came back. We hired another one who will work as a student worker until August. We also hired 2 summer reading laborers who happen to be college students. So we do have help in terms of running materials to waiting cars and performing other duties as we move on.
All right, we want to talk about the trustee training now.
Yes, I know that Beth, as chairman, has received a letter from Alabama Public Library Service describing the new trustee training, and I also sent it out to everybody via email. Some of you have really been active on the computer trying to go through all of the trainings, which I really appreciate. Several of you have commented that it's been difficult to find the one that I pointed out to you that I wanted you to look at. I think they have simply removed it from that site, I think. But anyway, this particular task has to be completed by the end of 2021. So we have over a year to go through all of the materials. But I thought it might be a good way for us to get started to show the first one today. It's only going, each one's only about 10 minutes. So we may cover one each time or one every other time, since we have to do it in 2021. So Christy is sitting at the computer and she's going to play that 10-minute segment for us on expectations, I believe, of trustees.
Is this the website? Because
Yeah.
we need someone to sign into it. Because you have to. So I need someone to come log in.
Does anybody remember their login information? Password?
I don't remember my password. That's
I
a
don't
second
remember
one.
my password either.
I know, I'm in the same situation. Can you go ahead and, see you got your,
You know, I told you I had a problem with the trash.
Yeah, if you want to give it a go.
Passwords.
And you may be able to just type your email in and if you save your password,
Right.
you know what I mean? It might automatically put it
Yeah.
up there. It wouldn't even let me choose my password. Apple put a password.
Really?
this doesn't work, Christie, you can just create an account for lots of books,
Okay,
because it will get you in there right away.
okay.
It's not wanting to take my password.
Okay, I'll just set up a new account real quick. I thought that would just be faster if someone already had an account.
Hit log on before you leave, and let's see if we get in.
Let's see. Invalid email. Okay, we'll go back. No, you've already had one, Barbara, so. Stupid allergies.
Feel ashamed of the talk from sneezing in public. I don't want to be tackled and sorted out.
Received. Okay. Where is sign in?
You complete that, I want to mention that several libraries use software to help them with handling their masses of participants in the summer reading program. And some of these software are quite expensive, but they came out with one that's reasonable enough that we decided to invest in. You can use it not only for summer reading programs, but for any kind of extended program that you would like to manage. And it will give whoever participates badges, rewards that they can use online, which mostly would be opening up a game that they could play. We're still going to give, in addition to that, incentives that the children will pick up at the end of the summer reading program. We were really excited to find this, and hopefully it's a new thing for us. We will feel comfortable in never going back to written logs, but having them log on their books online. But it has been dependent on them using ebooks. So that's another thing we had to make sure we had a generous amount of ebooks available to those who have internet home.
What is it called?
It's called Read Squared, and it's number 4 on your agenda. It can actually even be used for book clubs. And I think it would be fun to do other programs this way as well. It has a lot of different facets that we will cover in a few minutes after we've gone through this. And I think, from what we can tell, that those who are enrolled in it are enjoying it. And I think it would be valuable for us to use it again. The only problem is, of course, it's not all children have computers. But if we open the library and have access to the hardcover books, we can actually show them how to log in what they've read on our computers. And they would still be able to do it.
Which video did you want to?
It's the short tag.
Short takes, okay. And the,
First one, it says what? I can't read from here.
what it means to be a trustee?
Yes.
10 minutes?
Yes.
Okay. Where is?
Trustees. I'm Beth Novolinsky, the Director of Marketing and Communications for United for Libraries.
We are the division of the American Library Association for trustees, advocates, friends, and foundations. Today, I'm here speaking with our executive director, Sally Gardner-Reed, about what it means to be a library trustee. Sally, what does it mean to be a library trustee?
I think the simplest answer is in the American Library Association. It's to hold the public trust to ensure that their investment in the library is employed to ensure that best practices are and to have the quality of life that their investment in the library and full participants in their local government and to enjoy lifelong learning.
Is there a difference between governing boards and advisory boards?
There is a difference. It's a pretty big difference, actually. Governing boards have the full responsibility for all assets of the library. That's their fiduciary responsibility. It means that they hire, evaluate, and can fire the library director. The library director is a direct report to them. They are typically elected at large by the community, or else they're appointed by the governing body of their entity, whether it's county or city. And again, they do have the full responsibility for the library. Advisory boards are, as the name implies, there to just simply advise the library director. They're representatives of the community, and they sometimes help with the same types of jobs that the governing board does. They assist with policy setting. Sometimes they assist the city or county manager with the library director's evaluation, but they have no direct authority over the library director and no direct authority over the library itself.
And for the purposes of our discussion today, are we talking more about governing boards or advisory boards?
We'll be talking throughout the series really more about governing boards, but actually much of what we'll be discussing will be applicable to advisory boards as well.
Earlier you mentioned fiduciary responsibility. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yes, most people think of fiduciary responsibility as simply financial responsibility, but it actually is much more than that. It is a responsibility to act in good faith always, to have no self-interest, to have no conflict of interest. That means no hiring of kin, no letting contracts out to your brother-in-law. It really is acting at that very high level of integrity in all actions.
And we're going to talk in another session about board ethics, which you were just referencing. Can you tell me a little bit about the pros and cons of having a fiduciary board?
I am a firm believer that it's always best to have a fiduciary board. They give a lot of protection to the library director because the library director is a direct report to that fiduciary board. And I believe that the fiduciary board is a lot more directly connected to the community. When there isn't a governing board, it is typically the case that the library director is a direct report to either the city manager or the mayor or the county administration. And that means that that library director is typically at will employee. And that means that if the county or city administration finds some of the materials in the library objectionable and want them removed from the shelves, the director's in a pretty difficult spot to keep them there because he or she can literally be fired by not complying. Also, when the library director is a direct report to the city or county administration, they have to walk a pretty fine line in being direct advocates for the library's budget. So advisory boards do have less liability than governing boards, but the director has far less protection.
You mentioned less liability. What do you mean by that?
Well, when you are a fiduciary for a nonprofit, you have a certain level of risk because you are in charge of the assets of that nonprofit. Courts are generally very liberal in their take on nonprofit board members. So they understand that nonprofits are a corporation and board members acting in good faith within a nonprofit are generally protected by the courts. Not always, but generally. You don't often hear of library board members being sued, for example. But there is a level of risk. So one of the things that library boards can do is indemnify themselves. And that means that they write into their bylaws that the library will cover board members and their expenses if they're sued, regardless of how frivolous, by the library's budget. So that helps protect individual board members to a degree. But most attorneys will advise board members of nonprofits to be sure that they have directors and officers insurance. And this insurance covers the board in total, as well as individuals, for all legal fees and all court costs if they are sued, with the exception of being sued for discrimination cases in which individuals on a board are found guilty. So it's a really good insurance to have.
So there really is a lot of responsibility in being a trustee.
There really is, but there's also a lot of gratification.
Can you describe effective board-director relationships for us?
Yes, I think simply put, it's when trustees govern and directors manage. But that sometimes is easier said than done. It's not always a clear line when governing lets off and management begins. So I think one of the ways to sort of test it is that boards should be looking outward. They should be looking at community. They should be setting policies for delivering services to that community, promoting the library to the community, advocating for library services to the community. The director should be seen, I think, as the chief executive officer, the CEO. He or she should be the one responsible for the staff, for developing services and programs to meet the needs of the community, for managing the budget on a regular basis, overseeing that financial piece, doing all the operations that a normal CEO would do to move the library forward and to make sure that the library is meeting the needs of the community. So I think it's a good relationship is one where there's a high level of trust, where trustees, as I say, govern, where librarians manage, and there's not micromanagement on the part of the board, but on the other hand, the director keeps them well informed and respects their input and respects them as well.
Can you give us a concrete example of this?
Yes, I think the development of a collection and policy is a really good area to look at. So, for example, the Library Board of Trustees will adopt a collection development policy. They will look at a draft that perhaps the director brings to them. They will ensure that it meets the needs of their community, that it works for their library. They'll modify any draft that comes to them and finally adopt it. And when they do, they stand behind that policy and hand it off to the director. And that policy provides a framework for collection development by the staff. So the trustees don't decide which books to purchase and what materials should go into the collection. That's for the staff to decide. But as I say, the board needs to stand behind it because it is their policy. So when materials are challenged, and that does happen from time to time, people have differing views on what's objectionable, the board needs to be prepared to stand behind their own policy. Now, most collection development policies will come with a reconsideration form for those who find materials objectionable. They can fill out the form. That usually goes to a collection development committee for their feedback, and then it goes to the director for his or her comment. And then if that doesn't satisfy the person who is challenging, it can go to the board. If that material was selected well within the framework of the policy, again, I have to say that it is the board's policy and it's really their job to stand behind their own policy.
That sounds like a very important and often difficult role for library trustees. And we'll be talking about policy development in another session. Thank you, Sally. This has been a really good discussion about what it means to be a library trustee. And I can see from our discussion here that when there's a great library, there's a great board and director relationship, providing a good foundation for success. And I'd like our listeners to know that we've developed a list of additional resources which your director will provide to you. We invite you to review that list and discuss any questions that you have with your library director. Thank you.
Okay, I hope you all found that interesting and useful information. Sometimes you just need to have clarified what your job duties are and what my job duties are and how they work off of each other. I enjoyed it because it did remind me of some things in terms of relationships with board members and what my expectations should be of them and vice versa. But I did bring in the policies and procedures manual. I think I've shown it to you before and asked you to look at it. There's a collection policy in there. In looking at it in preparation for this meeting, though, I do know that we need to update it this year because it is very much dated and we need to bring it up to speed on a lot of policies. So I may be involving you in that when I get the rough drafts completed and pass them over to you and ask you to take them home and look at them and comment on them, or maybe we can do that here at the board meeting. But anyway, I think this is going to be a useful series. It just bothered me that she said the word or the phrase fire the director a little too often. So just disregard that part. Do all of you know which type of board you are? Governing or advisory? This is a test. Advisory, yes. And do any of you know what Anniston Public Library is?
Yes, good.
They are governing. So their library board handles the money-making decisions. And it functions quite differently from ours. So I think governing boards were more common for many, many years. And advisory boards, I think, are coming into their own and are usually city departments function as that. Do you all have any questions or comments on that, Alexa? Okay. Let's talk about Read Squared, if we can get a copy of that up on the screen. That's next on the agenda. Read Squared is the software I was mentioning to you. As I explained on the agenda sheet, it's software for developing, implementing, managing, and reporting library programs. It sounds like it does it all. It just about does. We've been quite impressed with it. And we aren't even through the summer reading program yet. So we know on the back end of all of this, there will be reports that can be accomplished through the information the software is collecting for us. So that is another thing that excites us, is that it's going to lend a new way to report our statistics and pull them up quickly. So, Christy, do you want to tell them a little bit about Read Squared?
Yes, it is a really easy website to use. They also have an app that's available for patrons to use on their account, and it is really easy to use. They log in with a username and a password, and they can do one username and password for the whole family. So mom or dad or grandma, whoever's taking care of the kids, can manage everybody's in one. Registration is pretty easy. We don't have a adult reading program this year, but if we did, you could do just adults could register. Myself and my children, or myself and my group, would be what you would have to do there. And we do require some information. Let me just type this in real quick. And oh wait, that doesn't need a library card number. Oh, 7 characters in length. Okay. And when they log in, it lets them add children. 1 alpha, 1 numeric. Okay, fine. for password 1. This password thing gets me. And then it asks you for the children, and you can select how old the children are. So if you have a 5-year-old, and then it will ask the information. It automatically assigns them to the early readers, which is ages 0 to 7, or the children's program, which is 8 to 12. And you would fill in, I'm just going to put my husband's name in there because why not? So we're not going to comment on that. 7, 10, and I said he was 7, so that would have been, how many, 10 years ago? 2013. Thank you, math person. Yay.
Joseph, are you familiar with this? I'm assuming you've registered your child?
I have not registered them yet. We downloaded the app, and I have not registered them yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're getting Felix a new device, as apparently Keystone is doing maybe some different things this fall, so. On his, once we get it in there.
Keystone, and let's see, 2nd grade. We are asking them their t-shirt size because we had already purchased the summer reading t-shirts that they get for completing. So that will go in there. And then they have an option to get book recommendations. It's actually tied to our catalog. So they can actually sign in and get, do they want to send recommendations by email? And you say what kind of things that the children like to read. And if they're a boy or a girl, because they're not going to recommend princess books to the boys. If they don't care if they read princess books or not, you don't have to check that. And then the age reading levels. There's also options to decide what kind of books. Do they like adventure books, classics, poetry, funny stuff? Do they tell us things that they're interested in? And these are kind of themed to the reading program, which this year is Imagine Your Story. So you can choose all of that. And then done adding children, or you can add more than one. And what happens is they get badges like this when something is complete. And then for the adults, it just says, thanks for signing up. It'll allow you to manage all of your children's accounts. And then they can log materials. You can see all of the badges that they can get. We have a program right now that's reverse coupons. So for example, if you go to Baja Grill and say, hey, they have a badge here. Let's go and see what that badge is about. That's in the missions, and that's community love. We're basically asking people in the community to go out and show some support for the organizations and businesses that have typically supported us by donating coupons or merchandise or things like that for that. So they go to the mission, and they see that there's just a brief description of the different businesses, and they go in. When they go into Baja, for example, they'll say, when they come up to the counter, they'll say, hey, I'm with the library, I need the code, and they'll give them a little slip of paper with the code on it. And they do, ask to complete it. And I think, is that fish tacos? I don't want to print. Why is this doing this to me? Escape. Okay. So that's not the correct. Maybe, oh, bless you. Maybe it was queso for this one. I don't remember. Yeah, okay. So it says invalid code, but when you get the code, it gives you a badge, and this will light up. And then when you get all of the badges for these in different businesses, it lights up this badge that says, we love Jacksonville. And so there's all sorts of other missions they can do. We have our Friday programs. They can complete missions for that, for each program that they watch. For example, last Friday, Louie the Clown did a Facebook takeover and did a 45-minute show for a live show for the kids to watch. And it's still on our Facebook, so they can go back and rewatch it.
And he's been here several times in person, so the kids know him.
Yes.
And it had good viewing.
Yes, a lot of people have really gone in and watched it live. A lot more have gone back and watched it again. There is the Facebook link there. And for these, when you complete it, it will tell you, just completion text, tell us what your favorite part of the show was. And then, okay, his puppets name is Oogly Boogly. So you complete the activity, and it says at least 10 characters. So you have to put in, I like Oogly There we go, complete activity. And see, now it shows, hey, you got a badge for that. And then you can see in your badges that you have this badge now. Book logging is pretty simple. To log the reading, you just choose which person, and it's grayed out for the people that can't log any books. So right now we just have a kids program, so it'll let you do that. And you type in the book title. And a lot of times it'll pull up the list here, and you can see a lot of different ways that it's entered. You enter in an author, and rolling, and check the kid you're submitting it for, submit, and it will tell them, okay, you've earned 5 points. They earn 5 points for every books that they read. So they can log 10 points a day, and they can see their logging. Let's look at family members. Let's go back here. And the kids have a really nifty thing. There's a little avatar here that they can play with, that they can look at this information, play with the avatar. You can see what they've logged. They can create, you can see all the badges that they've earned from that. We have also a mission, because I'm going to call out Mr. Munster here. So where's the missions? Missions. One of our missions is our story times that we usually do. This year, before summer reading started, we had a couple of wonderful volunteers come in and go ahead and film the story times for us, and those are on YouTube. And when you go to the story time, it gives you the link to the YouTube page where the just a brief description of what it is. And then it gives you the information about the YouTube video and a little craft video that goes with it. And to complete, in the middle of the story time, or at some point during the story time, the reader gives out a special code. They'll say, you know, your activity completion code is whatever that is. And then they'll type that in and get that badge, same as they did before. And
you say that Joseph was 90?
Yes, Sir Joseph.
Because he passed his audition.
But I did try to theme it a little bit toward the fairy tale theme. We've also got these aren't on here, but we have bedtime stories that come out Wednesday nights at 7 on Facebook that we've pre-filmed. That the staff, mostly it was the staff that did those. There's a couple of other volunteers that came in and did some bedtime stories as well.
So. President of JSU.
Yes, his story time's coming out tomorrow. We'll put the link there live in the morning. That way they can watch it tomorrow. So they're used to our story times being on Thursdays, so we're putting the links out on Thursdays. Same with the Friday programs with the entertainers. We're putting those out on the app as they come up on Fridays. That way they're similar rhythm to what's going on.
And some of the others that have appeared, local celebrities.
Mm-hmm.
We've had Fairy Godmother come in read a story. And we've also had Norwegian Chef.
Yes, that one's funny. Those aren't live yet, but I highly recommend checking out. There'll be a playlist at the end of the summer reading program in July, whatever the last Wednesday, the second Wednesday of July is when the last story time will come out. And so there'll be a playlist. Everything will be live on YouTube. So you can go back and watch all of them. I highly recommend all of them. Honestly, they're all really good. Joseph's trending right now because Josie called everybody that she knows that also knows him. So yeah, I think you've had about 60 views already.
Oh, wow.
So yes, Kathleen's a close second. Her bedtime story's at like 50 something. So it's getting a lot of views. A lot of people are actually logging in and seeing these, seeing the videos, enjoying the stuff. They can see there's a little game board involved as well. As they complete missions and complete points, it moves them along the little game board, and it will let them play games. So every time they get 10 points, it unlocks a new set of 2 games. And so for the 0 to 7s, they're easy, reading and activity games. Sometimes they're interactive storybooks. For the older kids, some of the games are puzzles. Some of them are more like y'all remember the old guide Simon, where you had to press the colored buttons in order? There's a digital version of that the kids have on the older kids one. So you just kind of follow the thing and it reveals a picture, and then B. Here's the B. See, they don't put them in order. And then that reveals a little picture, and they can actually print this picture to color at home if they have a printer. So every little game like this gives them little activities that they can do there. We also did another mission of just fun activities, the photo scavenger hunt. And these are just uploading pictures. So just take a picture of them reading outside. And when they complete this badge, they get points. Is it points or activities? I don't remember how we had it set up. It's been so long ago. But they get little badges and things for completing all of these little activities. And it tells them when they've won a prize for reading 5 books, because they still get those. We're still working on how we're going to get them to them, but it can see, with the logging, you can see how far you are into your badges and stuff.
So this gives them immediate reward, which acts as an incentive, much like the physical prizes we gave last year, previous years. But we still have the physical prizes in order for this program. So what we will do at the end of the program, we'll have a definite finite cutoff date. And that's where we determine how many books they completed. And then the next week, after we shuffle stuff around in here, we will call them to come pick them up on the curb. But what we'll have to do is put them all in bags. We'll have to determine this bag is for so-and-so who finished 5 books, he gets this prize. On up the line, 30 books. So it's going to be like a major production for us to get all this organized.
Thank goodness for all the extra help for the summer reading laborers.
But, I think the kids, will come out of this really having had a blast. And Chrissy's just shown you the patron side of it. We met several times to talk this through and figure out what we wanted to do. Had to go through a lot of scenarios and decide how many points for this, how many points for that, to make it pretty much like it was last year in terms of what our expectations were for them to earn a prize. And so we're quite pleased with it so far. It seems to be working well. We just showed the patron side. There's a lot on the staff side, like in-system messaging, emails, and text, so that we can communicate directly with them. Lots of things that we can do besides just the reports. It seems to be a wonderful thing. We're very pleased with it. In conjunction with that, we have ChameleonNet, which is our resource for ebooks. We have heard complaints from patrons about ChameleonNet in that sometimes there's a long waiting list to get the book. So one of my new workers had worked at a library that had Hoopla, and we checked on it. They offer ebooks, movies, music, audiobooks, the gamut. And theirs are immediately available. So for those of you who enjoy ebooks and you run into that problem with ChameleonNet, Hoopla's ebooks are immediately available. It's free to you, the patron. We're paying for it, but it's free to you. So I hope those of you who enjoy ebooks will try it out and let me know what you think, and recommend it to the community. You know, people who have been disenchanted by having to wait, 18 weeks to get the ebook they want. Tell them about Hoopla, because I will be doing a serious comparison of the two over the course of this next year to see what we want to really focus on.
How many are enrolled in the reading program now?
Last time I asked Chrissy, it was around 150.
Yeah, I haven't checked it today because of all the technical issues of getting this going. So I haven't checked today's numbers, but I think we're sitting about 150, which is much lower than usual. But for a first time year doing it, like, I think we're doing great.
I think we normally have around 700
Mhm.
children, so it is
Yes.
quite a bit lower, but that was to be expected.
Well, then, didn't last year, if I remember correctly, you guys went out to the schools
Oh,
and
yeah, we
told
do
people,
that
so
every
that there
year.
wasn't that
Yes.
chance to do that this year to remind people as well.
Mhm.
And there are other factors, you know, parents have been at home with their kids trying to do homework for a few weeks, or maybe they're not interested in doing a reading program on top of that.
Mhm.
Very true.
I just don't know what factors might have played into this. So we look at it like we're pleased 150 people want to sample it.
Mhm.
And the good news is they'll do the PR about it with their friends. So perhaps next year we'll have a really good turnout.
Is this something that we want to use? And I'm just gonna assume that next year we're back to how we were last year. But is this something that we could do in conjunction with a regular summer reading program as well, and do like a blended virtual one like this and a regular one? Or
I don't see doing that. I think it would be too hard on staff. I can see mixing aspects of each, like even now, the summer reading program is going to be over midpoint July.
Mhm.
So we only have another month. But even now, the library would open tomorrow, and we could let people come in and pick their own books downstairs with children. I would still want them to log in on Read Square. So they would have the choice of reading either an e-book or a hardcover book. In fact, they have that choice now. They can locate a hardcover.
Mhm.
But I still want to keep Read Square as their login. I don't think we'll ever go back to paper login. For one thing, it's very time consuming for the kids to sit down and write out their book when you have that number. So I'm really happy with this, and I think we would want to stick with at least that part.
Mhm.
Okay. But no, we wouldn't knock out our hardcover books for the world, because they're especially important for the two main age groups we serve so well, and that's the elderly who like their large print, but it's also the children who are learning to read. And there's nothing like putting your hands on the actual book. Any other questions?
Move on to the monthly budget.
Yes, monthly budget. We've tried to work up a slightly different format for the monthly budget. Typically, we have the starting, which is the beginning of the budget year, and then each month that we meet, just before we meet, I have the person who looks this up for me to put down how much we've spent, and how much is remaining. This time I asked her, since so many of the things that we purchase here are not actually invoiced to us until the end, closer to the end of the fiscal year, I asked her to put down an encumbered column. As a reminder to us that we've got that expenditure coming up, even though it's late in the year. We don't need to spend, for example, that $10,000 down to a zero, because we've got something coming in for that. And then we have a column that we may remove called requested contracts, when we're thinking of, we would like to have X, but we haven't gotten approval yet as to whether we'll be able to purchase that. Then the remaining column tells you exactly what we have in each line. If it's a minus, it's in parentheses. We only have one of those. And it shows you the total at the bottom of how much money we have left for the rest of this fiscal year, which runs out at the end of September.
Is that about on pace?
I'm sorry.
That remaining numbers, that dollar you should, whatever you normally have.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Does anybody have one of these that shows the budget, but it has a second page attached? Okay. I don't know, normally I bring in to tell you how much we spend on various and sundry things, but I must have failed to get that when I was running copies over. So anyway, we've been clicking along here, trying to catch up on a lot of things that needed to get done. Wasn't able to do a lot in terms of this, because I needed face-to-face time with people when I was determining what I wanted to request. So we're playing catch up on the budget right now.
All right, stats.
Statistics, is your next chart. You can see we closed mid-March. Last year, we had 4,200 checkouts. This year, 2,800. April last year, we had 3,685. This year, 2,000. We were closed all of April. We were closed all of May. We had 7,000 last year, dropped down to 1,400. So it's made a tremendous impact. At the very bottom or near the bottom, you see wireless use, and under our fiscal year 1920 column, devices 344. That would be Wi-Fi. 344 compared to last year, 1,400. Now, I'm not trying to paint a sob story. Every library I know of is looking at this same scenario. It just has happened. And there are many libraries out there that are still not open and may not open during the length of time. So it has struck all of us in different ways, and I was amazed at all the different philosophies about how the library should be handled in this crisis. Down the road, Anniston pretty much kept everything running. Oxford Public, I think, even had like a internet cafe, letting people come in and use their devices. So everybody has handled it differently. Every little township has been its own little government doing its own thing. And it's been very interesting, even within this county, how it's been handled differently. But despite the fact that our patrons have been distressed about us being closed and unable to allow them to come into the building to pick out hard copy books, I do appreciate that the city has been so caring about its employees and its citizens through all of this and wanting to protect people as much as possible. But that's the way it has affected our staff.
Well, it could be helped. No.
No.
You know, it's no big.
And once we start back up, pretty much, I wonder if it's gonna be a big boom when we come back, or if there will still be a lot of people who are reticent to get out, especially our older group, to come back to the library. Remains to be seen.
Citizen comments.
So you.
Anything, citizen?
I have nothing today.
No comments on the live, no comments on the YouTube live, so.
Then we'll move to association business.
So on our money market account, our rate has gone down since our last meeting with the federal rate cuts. And so right now we are sitting in our money market effective May 20th. Our rate is 0.60%. So if you guys remember when we opened that account, it was right at 1%, and now it's gone down to 0.60%, which is indicative of where the rates are now with the environment, with everything that's going on. With the regions account, there's been no change in that, $3,040, and the balance in the money market, I failed to mention that. Current balance, $10,093.06. And I believe we opened that one with 10,000 even, so we earned almost $100 in less than a year on that interest. So not too shabby.
Anything else? Then we'll have closure to the meeting?
Make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
So we're voting.
I don't, we're going to meet next month, Barbara.
Yes, we plan to. I did not look at the calendar.
The July 15.
At that point, we will be able to report to you about how many people have completed summer reading and what we have planned in terms of programming in the near future. We already have a couple of things that will be live for people to participate. Glad you all come out today. Thank you for making the effort.
Sorry, I was late.
I was just glad to get out the house.
You weren't late, Joseph. You were a whole week